Old rivals Joey Logano and Kyle Busch battle it out at the very end, and Ross Chastain says he owes half the field an apology. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. We're here in my studio, as you can see. Okay, we're not actually in my studio, but the effect kind of works, right? Almost. Regardless, we're here to talk all things Gateway. NASCAR Cup Series' debut in St. Louis was, I think, a huge hit, a sellout crowd, more than 60,000 people there at Gateway, Worldwide Technology Raceway, whatever that track is called now. And we've got a heck of a race to talk about. Believe me, we will get to Ross Chastain's adventurous day, the run-ins he had with Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, apparently the rest of the field, but I want to begin this episode by talking about the finish. 3 restarts at the end. Kyle Busch versus Joey Logano on 2 tires, battling it out. The first restart looked like Kyle Busch got away, but Joey Logano was able to take the lead. Then on the second restart, Kyle Busch was able to throw it in there on the outside going into turn 1 and take it back. And then the final overtime restart, Kyle Busch, again restarting in the outside lane as the control car, gets beat by Joey Logano. Sliders, crossovers, a back and forth battle for position in the final 2 laps, a thrilling conclusion. 2 longtime rivals. It's a rivalry it hasn't been dead in recent years, but it's quieted down quite a bit. But I think it's still there. I don't think Joey Logano and Kyle Busch are best buddies by any means. I'm sure they love to beat one another. Today, it was Joey Logano in the 22 besting the 18. Logano's second points-paying win on the season, third if you count the LA Clash back in February. So this is the second race now, the second debut race, if you will, that Logano has won this season. Big day for Team Penske. Ryan Blaney was in contention all day long. We'll look at the top finishers in just a moment. But I first want to acknowledge the role pit strategy and tire strategy played at the end of this race. Both Kyle Busch and Joey Logano, like I said, took 2 tires during the final sequence of pit stops, along with Erik Jones. Meanwhile, guys like Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, who had been up front beforehand, Aric Almirola, they all took 4 tires. It was very, very, very difficult to pass out at Gateway. Not impossible. I would say it was probably slightly easier to pass at Gateway than it was, say, at Martinsville earlier this spring. All weekend long, drivers were comparing this track to Phoenix. I'd say that was especially accurate when it comes to the ease of passing. Lots of passing immediately after a restart, but after 4 or 5 laps, very, very, very difficult to pass, even if you had fresher tires, in which case Blaney and Almirola did. But we saw at the very end, it was Kyle Busch and Joey Logano driving away one-on-one on older tires. We saw in stage 2, Kurt Busch won that stage partly because they stayed out. So I just want to acknowledge that last cycle of pit stops, how important that was. This was a track position race. Joey Logano's team played the right strategy to get that track position late. He had to go out and beat Erik Jones and Kyle Busch straight up, and he did. But tire strategy was really important today. Joey Logano becomes the 4th 2-time winner this season, joining William Byron, Ross Chastain, and Denny Hamlin. Let's go and look at some of the top finishers. Kurt Busch still finished 3rd. He was fast. I'm just saying he got that track position thanks to bold pit strategy. He still bounced back on 4 tires to finish 3rd. Ryan Blaney gets a top 5 as well. Still the only Penske driver without a points-paying win this season. Of course, he did win the All-Star race recently. And Aric Almirola, who again was on fresh tires late, he ends up a strong 5th. He was great last year at New Hampshire, a flat 1-mile track. Gateway 1.25 mile, still very flat. Similar in many ways. Almirola fast once again. Big points day for him, but also a big points day for Erik Jones. Both of these drivers came in right on the bubble. I think actually both were just outside the top 16 coming into today. I don't exactly know what the points look like now. I haven't looked at them just yet, but I'm sure they're closer now than they were coming into the weekend. I thought Martin Truex Jr. had one of the best cars in this race, but he did not have that track position. He was one of the drivers who took 4 tires late and just couldn't get those spots back. He comes home 6th. Ross Chastain got 8th. We'll talk about him in just a second. Christopher Bell gets a top 10. AJ Allmendinger, who didn't make any laps all week long at this track until today, comes home top 10 for Colleague. That is impressive. No Hendrick Motorsports Chevys in the top 10. Kyle Larson there in 12th is the best finishing Hendrick car today. That is very, very surprising. Really, none of the Hendrick cars had great speed. Chase Elliott had to go to the rear early on due to a loose wheel. Managed to work his way back up towards the front thanks to pit strategy, but then he got spun. We'll talk about that in a second. He ended up 21st. William Byron finished 19th. I feel like I didn't see him on screen once today. I want to give an attaboy to Zane Smith, finished 17th in that 17 car, filling in for Chris Buescher, who late this past week it was announced would miss this race due to testing positive for COVID-19. He's expected back for Sonoma, but the young Zane Smith, who's won 3 times in trucks this year, got the opportunity of a lifetime, and I'd say he made just about the most out of it. I heard him talk during practice earlier this week about how his job is just to not go out there and make a fool of himself. He's not in a position to go and race anyone super aggressively and try to win this thing in a Roush car. He was out there to make the laps, complete the race, finish lead lap if he can, and he did. So I would say this was a very impressive and very successful Cup Series debut for Zane Smith. Actually finished a few positions ahead of his teammate Brad Keselowski, so that's pretty cool. Daniel Suarez was in contention once again for a top 5, top 10. He ends up finishing outside the top 20 after the jack broke on his final pit stop. And just what else can go wrong for Daniel Suarez at this point? Those are your top finishers from today's race, but honestly, the most interesting story of the day was happening in the very back of the field. Well, initially it was up near the front. Early on in this race, running inside the top 5, or I think they were battling for 5th and 6th. Ross Chastain in the 1 got into the back of Denny Hamlin, sent Hamlin up into the outside wall, broke a rear toe link, effectively ended Hamlin's day. He went multiple laps down trying to mostly fix it, and even then basically limped around at half speed all day long. I guess he was meeting minimum speed. It couldn't have been by much. The wreck was Ross Chastain's fault. He admitted to it after the race, and we'll talk about his post-race comments in just a second. But in the moment, Denny Hamlin was, I think, justifiably very, very frustrated. He just had his race ended, I think still in stage 1, by a guy with a strong history of making over-aggressive mistakes and ruffling feathers. Hamlin came back out on track multiple laps down and just dogged Chastain for the next, 100, really the rest of the race. At first, he drove Chastain down almost into the grass down the back straightaway. Then later, he just slowed down and swerved in front of him in the turns, slowed Chastain down even more. And then later on a restart, Ross Chastain was battling in the middle of 3 wide and turned Chase Elliott, spun Elliott around. To be fair, everyone around Chastain at that point was being aggressive. He wasn't the only guy sticking his nose somewhere it probably didn't belong. And Chase Elliott did come down and pinch him a little. It wasn't all Chastain's fault, but Chastain was certainly instigating an aggressive move, and again, he took the blame for that incident as well as a number of other incidents in this race, many I guess we didn't even see. But after Chase Elliott got spun, Elliott and Hamlin formed some sort of alliance on the next restart or a couple restarts later. Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin have not always seen eye to eye, it's safe to say, and I know their fan bases are certainly not best friends. But for one glorious moment this afternoon out in St. Louis, the Elliott and Hamlin nations came together to defeat the Chastain Empire, and I gotta say, it was one of the most amusing things I've seen on a racetrack happen on a racetrack in quite some time, maybe ever. Because on that next restart, Chase Elliott punted Chastain up into the wall. As Chastain bounced off the wall, Denny Hamlin sideswiped him with his right side of his car. The car was still intact, and as we noticed a second ago, he still came back to finish inside the top 10. But time after time after time, Chastain was put further and further behind by either Hamlin or in this case Chase Elliott. Hamlin later in the race was once again jacking up Chastain in traffic. They just would not leave Ross Chastain alone. It was comical. And you guys are asking, why didn't NASCAR step in? I mean, they did everything but black flag Hamlin. I mean, they were apparently over the radio telling the team that, hey, you've made your point, you're done. And Hamlin didn't listen to him. In fact, at one point, he literally laughed at them over his radio. Look, we'll talk about Chastain's comments in a second. He was at fault for the Hamlin issue. He made an over-aggressive mistake early in the race. The two had been racing each other hard for a long, long time. It was hard to pass, and Ross just got impatient, as he's prone to do. Hamlin had every right to be upset. I thought the first couple times he was kind of messing with Chastain on the track was totally fair game. I feel like it went on a little long. Like, again, it was comical at a point. But he sent a message, and he did it without destroying Chastain's car. I think that's fair, in my opinion. If NASCAR is going to let the drivers police themselves, they have to give them some room to do just that. So let's get to Ross Chastain's comments after the race, because Ross Chastain, say what you will about his on-track activity. Off the track, he is extraordinarily self-aware and was very apologetic after the race. He admitted that he drove terrible today and said, quote, "It's one thing to do it once, but I kept driving into guys. I owe half the field an apology." Half the field, he says, and then he kept going. "I deserve everything that they do. I can't believe I continued to make the same mistake." He even apologized to his sponsors. Like, we're used to hearing drivers plug their sponsors in interviews, but you don't hear them apologize to their sponsors the way Chastain did very often. So look, I love the apology. I honestly think he was almost too hard on himself. Like, the Hamlin mistake was a mistake, and I'm glad he owned up to that. The Chase Elliott one, he was being aggressive, but so was everyone else around him. I don't think you can put that incident solely on Ross Chastain's shoulders. Now, I obviously didn't have a camera on Ross Chastain from start to finish. I'm sure he bumped into some other people, and that's what he's alluding to when he says he owes half the field an apology. So maybe he did race way in over his head routinely, consistently throughout the day. I mean, if he did, I'd believe it. He's done it before. But I still feel like he was a little hard on himself. Like, you don't want to hear a driver sound so psyched out. That's how he sounded. He sounded distraught almost. I don't want to use too strong of language, but Ross Chastain was using very strong language to describe his driving abilities today. Look, I'm glad he owned up to it off the track, but I know what you all are thinking. He can say all he wants off the track, but until we actually see a change in his driving style on the track, these words mean ultimately nothing. And I wholeheartedly agree. This isn't the first time Ross Chastain has said, yeah, I'm probably owed one. Yet he continues to make many of the same over-aggressive mistakes. So, in conclusion, I like that he acknowledged it. I appreciate the self-awareness and the apology. I do feel like he was almost too hard on himself. I don't want to hear a world-class championship contending race car driver be so self-deprecating the way he was. That's just my take there. But at the same time, I want to see his words turn into actions on the track. Chastain's aggressive. He's always been aggressive. I don't see him snapping his fingers and suddenly becoming Mark Martin out there anytime soon. And he doesn't need to be Mark Martin. He just needs to dial it back a little. Just a little. I've criticized and defended Chastain's moves this year, and like in the case of his Circuit of the Americas when I did both, self-awareness is the first step to fixing a problem. At least he understands that he has a problem. Eventually, he's got to change his actual driving on the racetrack, or else he's going to continue to earn the reputation that he has. Hamlin didn't cut him a break. Elliott didn't cut him a break because he's Ross Chastain. If Martin Truex Jr. goes 3 wide and maybe bumps Chase Elliott and causes Elliott to spin, I don't think Elliott punched Truex into the wall. But Ross Chastain has a reputation. He's aware of that. Now he's got to change things on the track, not with words off the track. Words matter, but on track matters much, much more. Anyway, we've talked Ross Chastain. Now let's put this race on the Groovy Gauge. I had very low expectations coming in, I'll be honest. I was pleasantly surprised when they announced a sellout crowd, the largest crowd in Gateway's history. But it's a flat, short oval. And we've seen this year, whether it's Phoenix, Martinsville, flat, short ovals don't always race great with this next-gen car. And once we saw in practice that they were shifting multiple times a lap, heck, they were downshifting twice going into turn 1 at some points. I was even more worried because we saw shifting affect the passing at Martinsville. Drivers would make a mistake but would be able to pretty quickly recover by downshifting or however, and that prevented many passing opportunities. I thought we'd see the same thing today at Gateway, maybe to the extreme, and in some respects we did. We didn't see much passing over the course of long green flag runs, but on restarts at least, we saw tons of passing. We saw 3 and 4 wide moves being made routinely. Did not expect that, and at least as the race went on and the groove continued to widen out and we saw variant tire strategies, some guys on 2, some on 0, some on 4 tires, we did start to see passing up in the top 5, top 10. Not a ton, not as much as you'd like to see in NASCAR, but a serviceable amount in my opinion. It was still a track position race, but you could make up some spots on the racetrack. It was almost a good balance, but not quite. Still, the shenanigans between Chastain and the world were very, very fun to watch. I actually thought Kenny Wallace, who joined the booth during stage 2, was really good alongside Michael Waltrip and Clint Boyer. I was worried it was going to be way, way too silly, but because we saw a lot of silly stuff on the racetrack, the content really fit their style, and I thought they worked pretty well. And, of course, Kenny Wallace there to give Gateway some love, give St. Louis some love. It was actually a decent part of the broadcast. Overall, I'd say the NASCAR Cup Series premiere at Gateway, St. Louis, was a success. I'm going to give this race a solid 75% on the Groovy Gauge. Part of me wanted to see it go green between Kyle Busch and Joey Logano. I loved seeing Logano peek his nose in, get up side by side with Kyle Busch in those closing laps. That was great, great stuff. When Harvick hit the wall hard, hated to see that, and I was worried the restart was going to get squirrely and someone like Kurt Busch or Eric Jones was going to send it in there 3 wide and wreck everyone. I'm glad it ultimately came down to Logano versus Kyle Busch, and in my opinion, the better car at that point in the race did get the win. So congrats to Joey Logano. 75% for me on the Groovy Gauge. A very, very good race. I was expecting this to be a 40 or 50, so I was very pleasantly surprised. But share your thoughts down in the comment section below. What kind of score would you give the Gateway NASCAR Cup Series debut? And share your thoughts on the Chastain drama on Joey Logano versus Kyle Busch. There was plenty to watch and plenty to talk about this afternoon. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. But that's going to do it for this episode. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR day in, day out, even when I'm not in my physical studio. We keep this show on the road, and that's thanks in large part to you all on Patreon. I truly appreciate your support. Couldn't do this show without it. We'll be back home later this week. Lots to talk about before the Cup Series goes out west to Sonoma for just the second road course race of the season. And then we have a week off. So everyone's going to leave it all out on the line at Sonoma next week, and I'm excited. I still call it Infineon sometimes, back when I was playing the old NASCAR Thunder games. Anyway, we'll talk about that later this week. All things Gateway. Gateway's on the mind. Today, I will see you all again very, very soon. Thanks for watching.